Hey everyone, and welcome. This is your go-to explainer on plant nutrition, and it's brought to you by us here at Tutorial Haven, where we're all about making your exam prep simple and super smart.
All right, let's kick things off with the big question to really get you thinking. Have you ever, just looked at a giant tree, one that's hundreds of feet tall, and thought, how in the world does that thing get its food? Where does all that wood and all those leaves actually come from? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
So first things first, let's nail down what we even mean by nutrition. It's basically the whole process of how any living thing gets food, processes it, and then uses it to, well, live. For a plant, it's all about gathering the raw materials it needs to build itself up. The leaves, the stem, the roots, and to get the energy for everything it does.
Okay, so how do plants eat? They don't have mouths, right? So they've come up with a couple of really clever strategies to get the food they need. Let's get into those two main ways right now.
Okay, you're going to want to really focus on this slide because this is a huge concept for your exams. Plants basically fall into one of two camps. First up, you've got the autotrophs. The easiest way to remember this is auto, as in automatic. They automatically make their own food, so we call them the food makers. Then you've got the heterotrophs. Hetero just means different, and that's because they get their food from different or other sources. They're the food takers. Getting this difference down is absolutely crucial.
All right, let's dig a little deeper into that first group, the autotrophs. These are our food makers. And honestly, they're the foundation for pretty much every ecosystem on the planet. They are the amazing organisms that literally create their own food from scratch, using just a few simple things from their environment.
Now, the big idea here is that autotrophs are what scientists call producers. And that makes sense, right? They produce their own food. This puts them right at the bottom of the food chain. Now, they've got two main ways of doing this. The first one you've definitely heard of, photosynthesis, which uses sunlight. And the second one is a bit more unusual, chemosynthesis, which uses energy from chemicals.
So before we jump into the main event, photosynthesis, let's take a quick look at its really cool cousin, chemosynthesis. This is what some organisms use when there's no sunlight around at all. Think about bacteria living at the bottom of the ocean near volcanic vents. Instead of light, they harness energy from chemical reactions to make food. Here's your key exam point. Chemosynthesis does not need light and it does not produce oxygen.
Okay, let's get to the main event, the big one, the process that powers pretty much all life as we know it, photosynthesis. When it comes to how plants get their food, this is the absolute star of the show.
Okay, if there is one thing you absolutely must memorize, it's this equation right here. Seriously, this is like the recipe for life. So on the left, you've got your ingredients. 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of water. Then you add the magic ingredient, light energy. And what do you get? On the right side, you've got your products. 1 molecule of glucose, that's the sugar, the plant's food, and 6 molecules of oxygen, which is pretty handy for us. You've got to know what goes in and what comes out.
So we've got the recipe, but where's the kitchen? Where in the plant does this amazing chemical reaction actually happen?
Well, the kitchen is inside these teeny tiny structures called chloroplasts. The best way to think of them is like little solar-powered factories, and you find tons of them inside the plant's cells, especially in the leaves. It's inside these chloroplasts that you find the green stuff, chlorophyll, and that pigment is what acts like a solar panel, capturing all that energy from the sun.
Now, this is a really important detail for your exams. Photosynthesis isn't just one step, it's a two-part process. So stage 1 is called the light-dependent reactions. This part needs light, and it happens in these little stacks inside the chloroplast called the grana. This is where sunlight gets captured and water gets zapped apart. Then you have stage 2, the light-independent reactions, sometimes called the Calvin cycle. This happens in the jelly-like stuff called the stroma. This part doesn't need direct sunlight, instead it uses all the energy that was captured back in stage 1 to actually build the sugar molecule.
Okay, exam tip alert. This comes up all the time. Just because a plant has everything it needs for photosynthesis doesn't mean it's always running at 100%. Think of it like a car. Sometimes things can slow it down. We call these limiting factors. Let's go through the 3 big ones you need to know.
First up, we've got light intensity. Just take a look at this graph. See how as the light gets brighter, the rate of photosynthesis goes up, up, up? That makes sense. But then it just flattens out. It plateaus. Why? Well, at that point, the plant's little chlorophyll solar panels are completely saturated. They're working as fast as they can. Pumping in more light won't make them go any faster because something else is now the bottleneck. Maybe it's run out of CO2 to process. All right, limiting factor number 2, carbon dioxide. And you'll notice the graph looks pretty similar, doesn't it? As you give the plant more of that key ingredient, CO2, the rate of photosynthesis speeds up. But, you guessed it, it hits a ceiling again. It plateaus. And the reason is the same idea. Maybe the plant has plenty of CO2 now, but it doesn't have enough light energy to actually use all of it. One of the other factors is holding it back.
And our third limiting factor is temperature. Now, this graph looks a little different, right? It's not a flat plateau, it's a curve with a peak. The rate climbs and climbs until it hits a perfect or optimal temperature, and then it drops off really fast. The reason for this shape is all about enzymes. These are the little proteins that make the reactions happen, and they're super picky about temperature. Too cold and they're sluggish, too hot and they literally start to break down and stop working. That's why the rate just crashes.
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time on the food makers, but what about the other guys, the plants that can't do photosynthesis? Now we're going to switch gears and explore the super interesting world of the heterotrophs, our food takers. And these food takers have come up with some pretty wild strategies. You've got your parasites, which are basically plant vampires. They latch onto another living plant and just steal its nutrients. Then there are the saprophytes. These guys are like nature's recyclers. They feed on dead, decaying stuff in the soil, breaking it all down. And of course, there's the group that everybody finds so fascinating,
The carnivorous plants. I mean, how cool is this? Plants like the Venus flytrap or the pitcher plant usually grow in places where the soil is terrible and lacks nutrients. So, to get a little extra nutrition, they've evolved these incredible traps to catch insects. They digest them to get things like nitrogen that they can't get from the soil. It's just a genius survival strategy. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground, so let's wrap this up by boiling it all down to the absolute must-know facts for your exam. This is the key stuff, so let's do a quick-fire review.
Let's lock these 5 points in your brain. Number 1, autotrophs make their own food, heterotrophs take it from others. Simple. Number 2, know that photosynthesis equation inside and out. CO2 plus water plus light gives you glucose and oxygen. Number 3, photosynthesis has 2 stages. The light reactions happen in the grana, the dark or light-independent reactions happen in the stroma. Number 4, remember the 3 things that can slow it all down: light intensity, CO2 levels, and temperature. And finally, number 5, don't forget chemosynthesis. It uses chemical energy, not sunlight. If you can remember these 5 points, you are in great shape for this topic.
All right, let's finish up with one last challenge question to make sure this all stuck. Here it is. What is the key difference between the source of energy used in photosynthesis versus chemosynthesis? If you can answer that without even blinking, you have absolutely nailed a core concept from this explainer. Thanks so much for joining us today. And from all of us here at Tutorial Haven, happy studying.